broadhead stuck him right in the side of the head. And I never will forget watching him run off with that arrow sticking straight out of the side of his head.
I saw antlers, was one of those, oh my God, that's a huge deer.
There'd be tools lying around, and my wife would be walking around piles of sawdust.
I couldn't shoot because I couldn't shoot through that massive shoulder. This is a 10.5 foot, 1,500 pound brown bear.
Get recalibrated, be immersed in nature.
I went and cut a persimmon tree, and I made my first probably 24 bows out of persimmon.
That's how we dominated our fights, because we never got off the horse. We just kept shooting and battling.
As men, we have something in our DNA that seeks adventure.
I like nothing more than teaching this to other people, bringing people in from all walks of life and showing them this ancient art of bow making.
I've been bit by alligators and charged by bears, and I've been involved in plane crashes and boat flips.
I fell hard on my ass, and yeah, I chuckled about it. That really sucked. It was also a wake-up call.
My mother looked at me, she said, "Where'd you get that bow and arrows?" And I said, "I swapped my bicycle for it."
You don't go to Alaska because it's going to be super easy. You don't pick up a traditional bow because it's going to be easy. You do it for the challenge and the journey of overcoming difficult things.
He started forward, and as that leg came forward, I drew and released, and the bear was so big that the entire 30-inch arrow vanished inside his chest.
Welcome to the Bowyer's podcast, where we explore the ancient art of bow making, traditional archery, and the age-old pursuit of wild game. Together, we'll chat with masters of their craft to uncover the deeper why behind reviving the old ways in a modern world.
I just wanted to say that so far, all the times that I hunted, even the ones that I didn't shoot an animal, I had an amazing time.
Do you hear that sound? That beautiful melody is over a dozen well-trained hounds running through the mountains in Arizona as they chase a big old bear up a tree. In October of 2026, I'm going to be once again joining my friends at P&D Hunts to chase bears with my stick bow and a pack of dogs. If this sounds like an adventure to you, go ahead and email me at thebowyercollective@gmail.com, and I'll happily share the details to include pricing and logistics. P&D Hunts has offered to knock off over $1,200 off the outfitting fee for up to 5 hunters who'd like to join us. What I really like to do is set up an annual Bowyer podcast hunt camp where we chase critters, eat well, and share stories around the campfire. If this sounds like a fun time, go ahead and hit me up, and we'll get you on the list. All right, good morning, and welcome to the Bowyer podcast. This is your host, Matthew Morris. Thanks for chiming in and listening to us this week. This episode is brought to you by my friends over at Bastion Woodworks. Tracy and Katrina were on the show about a month ago. And for all of your woodworking tools, reach out to Bastion Head. Every single draw knife I have in my shop is from Bastion Head, and I've used them to make several dozen bows at this point, gnawing through hickory and oak and maple and pecan and osage. And Bastion Head's draw knives are really great. So check them out, support a small business, and you can, of course, use discount code Bowyer for free shipping. Also, check out the website when you can, the Bowyer Collective. We've got hoodies and sweatshirts and T-shirts and some unique art designs we put on there to support this little radio show and keep us on the radio waves, please. Also, I just want to bring into light a few of the events that are coming up, right? So, we know we've got the ETARs, we've got the Tennessee Classic coming up, and also the Compton Traditional Bowhunters Rendezvous, which is in June. For those that don't know, I moved locations this year, so do check out Compton Traditional Bowhunters and get all the specs and the updates as far as the rendezvous goes. But I know that there'll be some exceptional speakers, one of which is going to be on this podcast today. There's really wonderful vendors, shows, teaching, youth programs. I actually am donating a self bow to the youth program for that. And my buddy Sam Curtis of Polite Dangerous Tools is making a custom knife to go along with that bow that we're giving away and donating to the youth program at Compton. I believe they're going to raffle that off or auction it off, something like that, at the rendezvous. And there are some really tremendous bowyers that have bows and arrows and kit and everything else that they've donated to the various raffles and giveaways at the rendezvous. Organizations like Compton and PBS, a lot of their livelihood from a fiscal standpoint is based around these rendezvous and memberships. So if you're not a member, become a member. It's really easy. It's not expensive.
And it's well worth it just for the fellowship and support alone. But also, if you're able to make it to any of the rendezvous or these big events, do try to go and hang out with other people that are really pretty cool and like to shoot the stick and string. Here locally in North Carolina, we've got Barefoot Traditional Bow Hunters, or traditional archers rather, out of Burlington, North Carolina. I recorded a podcast with their president, Lee Hitton, last year, maybe in August, and their 3D season just started. I'm not much of a competitive archer. You guys all know that I'm a very average shot, but I do like to go for fellowship. But I do know that their February event that was scheduled for, I think, the weekend of 28th February is canceled due to weather. There are some spots out there that don't ever see the sun. And weirdly, we got a bunch of snow here in North Carolina. But the other event is going to take place, I believe, the fourth weekend in March. So if you live in central western North Carolina or even eastern Tennessee, it'd be a really cool place to go and meet up. I'll probably go there. Might even do a little podcast and probably have some sort of amber colored beverage around a campfire after we shoot. So check those events out. All right, without further ado, I want to turn it over to our guest and provide a good intro. We've got a giant of a man who basically can carry probably half a moose out on his shoulders. Traditional bow hunter, videographer, author, and all-around good human, Mike Mitten. How's it going, Mike?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, man. I was so grateful that our mutual pal, Brian Burkhart, gave me your number and introduced him. I think we briefly met via handshake at ETAR last year when I picked up your latest book, but we didn't have a chance to really visit because there's like a gazillion people there, right?
Yeah, it's pretty fun place.
Yeah, it is. It's a really cool event. I always enjoy going, despite sweating my tail off every time. Yeah. But it's a really cool event for fellowship and everything else. And you were there signing books. And that's actually what compelled me to reach out for the podcast, is because I just read your most recent book, which we're going to dive into. And I was really intrigued. And there are some hunters that have a gift with words, like Monty Browning, right? Who we know mutually quite well. He puts a pen to paper pretty often with his books and things of that nature. And he's got this very grand way of telling a story and things of that nature.
Yeah.
There's a lot of energy there because when Monty talks, he's just this very energetic dude in a way. He's animated. And then when I picked up your book, Mike, I was just like, man, I've seen you on video on your YouTube and everything, right? You're very stoic and I just see this very surly guy, right? And I'm saying this as a guy that doesn't know you well, just my perception through the lens. And then I read your book and I'm just like, this big, surly, stoic guy that goes out and spends 3 or 4 weeks in Alaska has a rather poetic way of writing, like a lot of imagery, a lot of thought and feeling and ethics and morals and faith and reflection. And I was just like, I really wanted to, I think, have a conversation and peel some of those layers back and just get to know you a little better and let, other folks that tend to get their information through a microphone or a speaker to pick it up and get to know you a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks. Boy, that's a pretty humbling intro.
I just finished my second cup of coffee for the morning.
Yeah, all right, good. Yeah. Yeah, I lived my whole life pretty much in Beach Park, Illinois, and I started bow hunting when I was young, like most of us. Early on, I used a compound bow, or I used a bear grizzly for a couple years, and then everybody around me was shooting compound bows at the time, all the older folks in the bow clubs and stuff. And we all shot their bow. No one had sights on these bows. They're like 20%, 30% let off. It was just a carryover from that era in the late 70s. And southeast Wisconsin is just across the border from where I live. There's 8 or 9 bow clubs. So I joined some of the clubs and we'd have shoots every weekend. And so that was my intro into bow hunting. We have our family property in northern Wisconsin. So I started hunting up there and killed my first deer there in 1977. And I just had a passion for it early on. My father was a hunter. He bow hunted in Black River Falls area in the 70s and late 60s. I don't think he ever killed a deer with his bow, but he would go off with his friends, that outdoorsmen, canoeists and fishermen and so forth. But so I had a passion for the outdoors. And then I started hunting in Illinois. We have multiple tags. We had multiple tags and you shot your first deer and first buck. And then you don't want the season to be over. Killing a buck ends the season. What's great, you filled your tag and stuff, but then the season's over. So I Started passing up early on, pretty early on, passing up immature deer, hoping for the big guy. That sort of extend the season. And then while you're doing that, you can't describe the animals to somebody real easily. So started filming, started bringing a camera along, not really set up to see the shot, but just a handheld camera behind me, and I'll pull it off the peg and film animals that were coming towards me and film what passed. And my brothers and friends in the area all did the same thing. So we would gather at the end of every season around Super Bowl Sunday to show these film footage. We call it the hunting party, but it really coincided with the Super Bowl. And that carried on to this day. We just had our party. There used to be 18 or 19 folks, but now we're down to about 12 that come for the last 40 something years to this event. So that's my sort of background to that. And then we made a film, started making a film with my brothers in around 2000, and film footage for other folks around for whitetails. And I since then gone off to Colorado, solo elk hunting in Colorado, mule deer, and then into Alaska, solo moose hunting into Alaska. So that's the premise from behind this film that me and my brother David and Mark started to make. And we show it to a couple of friends of ours, which you guys might know, Gene and Barry Wenzel from Montana at the time, and since have moved to Iowa, and I think back to Montana now, from what I hear. But anyway, they joined our project, asked to join, and we're just the Mitten brothers. The quality of equipment improved, and so therefore the quality of duplicating the end result improved during those times. So we had something that we could really share artistically. And to make a long story short, we made a film in 2005 called Primal Dreams, which launched a lot more of my notoriety. Prior to that, I have been writing articles for North American Whitetail, Bowhunter magazine, Great Lakes Bowhunter, so forth. So I had been published prior to that, and a member of PBS, Professional Bowhunter Society, and then local state organizations, Wisconsin Traditional Bowhunters and stuff. But the true launch of sort of people that know who I am or what we were doing was this film called Primal Dreams, really showcasing man's participation in nature as a hunter, man as a predator, as a hunter, and why we hunt, and then mainly put the wildlife in our natural habitat as the star, and the hunter, the human, as the supporting cast, not the star of the show or the lead. So it went really well for us. And then we made a sequel called Essential Encounters, another DVD. It was 2 hours for the main feature, and 45 minutes of bonus features highlighting some of the Native Americans, and that film showcased and passing on the hunting heritage to the next generation, to the kids. And since then, it was called Brothers of the Bow, Gene and Barry Wenzel, and we were the production crew for some of that, Wenzel Mitten Productions. And so we had a good run, but eventually people get ill and ideas fall aside and families grow, and you can't commit the tremendous amount of time to that effort. And so Gene and Barry are still doing and writing books and stuff on their own. I'll actually see them this weekend at Shipshewana, Indiana, this coming weekend at the Midwest Sportsman's Classic. But so since then, I've gone on my own and created my own film called Chasing Solitude. Showcases my solo moose hunting experience. I take you to 3 mountain ranges in Alaska alone, self-filmed, and then my son did the editing, and my other son played some solo guitar music, original. My sister played some original piano, so it's a family. And I'm working on a sequel to that now. So that's, if you mentioned where people would see me on YouTube and so forth, that would be where you would see me on YouTube.
Yeah, is that Herd Bull Productions?
Yeah, Herd Bull Productions is my YouTube channel, and then that's also my website. So hopefully I didn't bore you with all that, but that's where we are. And we came across my new book called The Enchantment of Bowhunting, and that's what drew you to us together at ETAR, Eastern Traditional Bowhunters Rendezvous, Pennsylvania. And here we are. And Brian's the past president, and you're president for your terms, and then you have to stay on the board as a transitional president. So that's Brian's position now, but he's a great guy. I've known him for years, and actually he's one of the guys that sort of bought one of my first books when it came out, and he has a passion for moose hunting and and so do I. So that's our bond there, but it's gone way beyond that now. He's a pretty close friend now by this time.
Yeah, he's a really good human, and he's been a really great, like for me, probably don't try to tell him this because I don't want to go to his head, but he's a really good mentor over the last couple of years for me and a good human. I really appreciate Brian. I think he's down in Mexico still. We're getting ready to come back.
Yeah.
Down there.
Yeah. Hard to keep up with you.
Yeah, he's always off in some far off place doing a hunt. Yeah. But yeah. Mike, so I'm also a Midwesterner. I grew up in Missouri, and I never envisioned myself. Midwesterners don't leave the Midwest, man.
Yeah.
Like they don't. Had I not ran away and joined the Marine Corps, I probably would have never left the Midwest. That my first time on an airplane was going to boot camp. That's why when I hear about guys that kind of spend time in the Midwest chasing whitetails and turkeys, breaking out of that and going and doing some of these adventure hunts, you know, what year and what age were you around that time frame where you said, all right, I'm going to go out west and chase elk, or I'm going to go to Alaska or Canada or what have you? When did you start adding those to your annual hunt planning?
Yeah. So we hunt mostly whitetails, and I'm known for getting in. We were forced into it, a lot of us, because of small properties. You have 40, 50 acres or whatever. So you can't come in and out of those small plots that we had permission very often. So you, by force, once you snuck in during darkness, get in near the bedding area and stay put, sit in your stand all day long. So I wrote some articles like that for North American Whitetail. And then the pursuit of whitetails is a solo thing. If you want to get mature bucks, it's not like a big party effort in my mind. If you want the big buck, less intrusion. You're trying to get a undisturbed animal. So you take all that extra time and you learn woodsmanship skills. And so also we went with a group of 3 or 4 of us every year. The group kind of mixed in with others coming in and out of that group. But every year, a bunch of us would go up to Canada, into Ontario, into the wilderness area, and hunt bears. So that's another spot where I learned a lot of woodsmanship and blood trailing and different species beyond whitetails. And then you read Bowhunter magazine and all that, and you listen to folks at Professional Bowhunter Society, meet Gene and Barry Wenzel. And I was really wanting to go, out west somewhere. But before we even did that, we all decided we were going to go to Alaska. So 4 of us got together and we went on a combination caribou and moose hunt in Alaska, where I took a nice caribou with a recurve bow, and I shot a moose with a compound bow and a night eagle with no sights on it or anything. But so that's a transition there from compound shooting or what have you, which at the time, 85-pound a night eagle with 30% let off is just about shooting a heavyweight recurve bow in itself. If you know that bow, kind of inline string with recurved limbs on it. So that's my transition. But so from there, I was really inspired to go out west. And so I got with my brother David. We hunted elk in Montana, talked to Gene. He'd give us a couple spots on the map. And he's done that for a lot of people. General areas, general mountain ranges, how to get into the trailhead and so forth. That's what you need from not being there. He's not holding your hand or anything, but he was gracious enough to help us get started. And we had a great experience with some giant bulls and the gotaways and so forth. But I always had this yearning to get back in out west, and a friend was going to hunt with me in Colorado, and it fell through. So I went anyway. So a timeline on that would be 1994 would be the first time that I hunted solo by myself for 17 days elk hunting in Colorado. And that sort of sparked it from there. I went the following year to Alaska on a 3 weeks solo moose hunt, and spawned from there. You're trying to get points and things out west to get into certain management units, and just leave your friend behind or your hunting partner. So I just started, I had a family, and so I was trying to fit things in around my family with that. So just on its own kind of got into me like, hey, I survived 1, 2, 3 solo hunts, and I just gravitated toward it. And I really liked it. I really enjoyed being alone in the wilderness. It has a spiritual nature. We're not talking to anybody or seeing anybody for multiple weeks. And back then I didn't have any connection. I didn't bring a satellite phone, or I had no connection with the pilots that were dropping me off or even anybody at home. That sort of added a little stress to my wife back home, and to not know what's happening. Going to Colorado, I would go to the trailhead and walk in multiple miles, and you're at your own freedom there. But up in Alaska, you're at the mercy of the dependence of, anyway, the pilot that's dropping you. But
and typically
then,
harsher weather and the more unknown,
yeah,
big predators, and
yeah.
I can
Out
imagine.
west, you can know that you can walk out from wherever you're going in, but in Alaska, you're not walking out from where very easily anyway, from where they're dropping you.
Yeah, I think a lifesaver for a lot of us nowadays is having like an inReach or set some sort of satellite phone so we can text our wives at least once a day and say, "Hey, I love you and I'm alive," type of thing. Yeah, I can imagine.
To me, that takes away from the solo hunt. If you're going to do that, I'm not saying not to. I'm sure I have that, a satellite phone as well as an inReach, partly because some of the pilots over the years, I have gone on over 12 solo moose hunts in Alaska, but the different pilots, they won't fly you without communication, or even take you by yourself at all. But of course, you're going to need that. But my point was that when you're alone by yourself, this weighs on you. The emotional side weighs on you. The mental side weighs on you. And that's the challenge that I'm looking for. And so if people are calling home every night as a human, communication is what makes us human. And so you're breaking that solitude.
It's almost like you're on a fast.
It's called Chasing Solitude. Yeah. And you're calling home every night or whatever. And I'm not going against it, but for me, back in the day when I wasn't doing that, I really have a totally different feel during the end of the first week and the second week. And then the third week, just longing to either get out of here if it's not going well or whatever. You get an animal on the ground and you're wishing that you had a lot of friends up there with you. But prior to that, moose and mule deer and elk, those three species to me are made for solo hunting, one-on-one, especially moose. But and then another thing I cheat in this regard, I'm making films because I'm by myself and I have the same techniques and things I used when we were hunting whitetails. I bring the cameras with me and make these films. So I'm cutting narrations into this camera. And so a lot of what I'm telling you, don't call home if you want this solo experience. But yet I'm communicating, basically talking to this camera, as Tom Hanks and Castaway.
Right? Yeah, that's what I was just saying. You need your video camera, Wilson.
Yeah. But anyway, we all find some way to get through it. Even on some of these television shows, Alone and all this stuff, they're cutting narrations every single day. So yeah, you're feeling that. But to me, the spiritual side of just not talking and not saying a word for multiple weeks and not seeing another human being, it's hard you can't find a way to mimic that down here. And the other thing is, we talk about, somewhat use the faith or religious side, the Sabbath, save one day, get off, and for God. Your world is coming around us so fast with AI and all this other stuff that this is a way for me to slow it down. At the time when I was working, I'm retired now, but a way to slow down the pace and slow down progress. Check out, get off the grid. You are off the grid. There's nothing. So if you're really reliant on your phone and all this type of social media things, and all that's gone when you go up there and you're checking out a Sabbath for a whole month or a Sabbath for 3 weeks type of thing. So it's all that plays into the reason why I like to go and the challenge of it. And I guess there's a quote on one of my films, like, what I fear the most is losing the will to be tested. A lot of people won't go. They don't want to take that test. They don't want to know the results. But for me, whether you pass or fail, at least when you're taking the test, you're out there in the challenge. And a lot of the success that you get as far as taking an animal, and you compare that with the success you come home with when you don't take an animal. And a lot of times, the ones where you don't bring home any meat are the results are even more valuable to me to this day. But that's a broad view of where my head's at.
Yeah, I think it's a lot deeper than.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not gonna lie. I always want to shoot something, always. And I would be lying if I didn't say that. Even on the times some people are like, "Oh, and this is great. I love this mentality." It's like, look, it's not just about the killing, and it's not. I can with honesty say, yeah, I'm still like let down a little bit when I don't, though. But I also think that differs through like the phases of life that you're in and things of that nature. But I love what you're talking about too. Is almost like humanity would benefit from a fast from modernity, from like the modern world, optimization. Yeah, you put progress in quotes, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what time in the outdoors gets us. And I think step one is, right, I don't know, walk in the grass barefoot and go to your park, local park or something. And then the other part is like a true kind of fast, or as you mentioned, like an extended Sabbath is extended time in the wilderness for many days or even weeks, and not, I can come down for an hour. And it's a little sad. That's our measurement of success. I spent less time on my phone today. And that's just this big monster that we have in front of us, glaring at us all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's, when your books and your videos are both inspiring to get out there and have experience solitude, right? Having that accessible and then making the time to do it. Because I even think that like a weekend camping by yourself is a really great form of therapy, just to, whether it's emotional, spiritual, however you want to put it, it's good for you. I think it's good for your brain. I think it's good for your soul. I know, like Brian talked about going out and doing the adventure and recalibrating, because he worked for GM for a long time. So it puts things in like mechanical terms, recalibrate. I know personally, if I go on a trip or whatever, look, there's always a little bit of salesmanship getting my wife to give me a kitchen pass to go on another trip. But she also acknowledges that I come back as a better man, a better partner, a better father, because I go on these trips, right? And full disclosure, like Mike, I have not done 2 or 3 weeks on a solo hunt like that. And I'm probably a few years from that. I think whether it's, I don't know if it's skill set, it's more of just, I think emotional maturity on my own part is probably part of it. And then also making sure that the household is comfortable with that absence. And I think a week-long trip or whatever, where I can holler at my bride within inReach is fine. And if I ever spent a couple of weeks or 3 weeks in the backcountry, I'd still be taking that inReach to check in every day, so that when I get home, I don't have to sleep on the couch.
Oh yeah.
But I think that some point of hardship and austerity is important, right? It's in our DNA. We were crafted from clay on the ground, and we need to become recognize that and contact with that sometimes.
Yeah. And the other part of what we do compared to other folks is, some non-hunters could say, touch your feet in the grass and do the camping and do the hiking and bird watching and all that. I did all that with my camera, and I can tell you, when I'm filming a giant elk with my video camera at 50 yards, my heart's not pounding the same as the time when I'm at that same scenario with a recurve bow in my hand. It's just a whole different other experience, another level. And so the hunting part of it, and it's just hard to explain to a non-hunter, but all of us that hunt, true hunters, all know what I'm talking about. It's just a whole different experience. So that's what you're longing for, whether you take the shot or make the shot. Once you knock that arrow, once you have an arrow on your string knocked, that means you're getting close, and it's time to maybe take one of God's gifts, take a giant moose or elk or whatever, a young whitetail or whatever you're hunting. That experience can't be duplicated, just like Brian was talking about and how you're talking about. So those times of hunting, and it can be short pace, it could be in a woodlot in Wisconsin or Iowa, or a wilderness place out west, or a grand area in the Yukon or Canada or Alaska, like I try to do. But you can find that solitude, the solitary place, that wild place on your own, and connect back. So it's a rejuvenation for me. It's making resolutions like you described with your family, a time for, you don't have to do it on New Year's Eve or whatever to make your resolutions to be a better man or whatever. You can do it on these hunts, and that's what keeps your brain, for me, your mind and your spirit occupied during that solitude. And of course, it's not for everyone. I talk about that in my books as well. Hunting and bear hunting with groups of folks and younger people and brothers, and hunts with other friends and stuff like that. Just certain species and certain times dictate that. But for me, going after a moose and creeping up to it gives you this romantic connection to the past. Our ancestors did the same thing, drew the bow back with the same muscles that we're drawing the bow back with, getting close like we are. And you can envision yourself just going back thousands of years or hundreds of years and doing the same thing, trying to get a moose down. And they probably said the same thing that we always say, boy, these things are very big. I forgot how big these things are. They probably think of the same thing. Back then, they were nomadic and they could actually move their camps to the kill sites, move their camps, the native folks, to where the buffalo were taken. So they were, but us, we're in a sort of in a modern world. So we get to visit the wilderness a month or 6 weeks or 2 weeks or a week, whatever, a year, and try to get in. And then, but we have to go back out. So everything for us is geared towards the maximum use of this time, the special time that we have. So that's where you write about the techniques and different things that I write about, trying to improve your chances to get that experience that I've had, to share it with others and build them enough confidence. I get a lot of calls from people that say, I like to do it yourself hunts and I'll do it with my friends, but to go on your own, there's this one thing called fear that sort of gets in the way. And I describe how we can get past that. And Monty does an excellent job. I probably take a lot of my cues from him on parallel tracks. I do things and I find out he's doing the same thing or he's thinking the same way. And other friends like Rick Snell in my second book, The Enchantment of Bowhunting, I talk about Rick Snell, another friend that lived in Alaska and has taken all the big game species in Alaska with a recurve bow. The people that you don't hear about so much. Like me, if you get away from the traditional circle, no one would probably know who I am. But I just have we have a close knit group here within the traditional community. But so I try to bring some of these folks to light in my books as well. Bart Schleier, some folks that came before us. But what I'm trying to say is, as I go and then I read about these guys, I agree with that. They're doing the same things that I did, unbeknownst to me. I didn't know that at the time. Sure. So then they become people that you're inspired to, and yet the reverse happens. I meet these people, and they're inspired by what I do, in the sense that I'm coming from Chicagoland area, north of Chicago. I live halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee, and so I don't live out there where these guys live and spend their whole lives. And then I'm injecting myself, city slicker, into the wilderness, and they say they can't believe this, while guys like Bart Schleier, their whole livelihood was being in the wilderness, large animal capture experts, guys. He's trapped and caught grizzly bears and tigers in Nepal and in Russia. Grand life he had, and yet he'd see me and he says, I can't believe that you can go out there and chase these moose like we do, and yet you're from the city. I live there, but I don't feel like I'm from the city.
Sure. So you've got what, 11 or 12 moose now, Mike?
No, I've gone on.
No, you've done 11 or 12
solo hunt. Yeah, I've only killed 5 moose, but the numbers, like you talked to Monty and Brian, yeah, that's a number that's hit the ground. But how many have you passed up? If you watch my videos, how many could you have taken out? How many trips? You go to work and they all, oh, did you get one? No, I didn't get one, but this is what I saw. This is a big one. So they start to hear that in a couple, 2, 3 years in a row at your coworkers. They're like, what's going on with this guy? He doesn't shoot anything. But then all of a sudden you do get the big one. Then they're like, man, this guy, I can't believe this guy did this. And so it works both ways. But I've taken 5 moose.
I think getting a moose on the ground every other time, or
a
quarter of the time, right? It's
pretty
doggone impressive.
Yeah. The thing is, when you're by yourself, then it's you got somebody with you, then the work starts, and a lot of them have. And I would suggest not to go moose hunting alone. This guy who's hunting alone, and then he's telling us not to go alone. It's a real special thing, and you have to have enough confidence in yourself to be able to do it, and it can fall apart real quick. And for me, I come to terms with it, so it's hard for people to start it. But if that's what you want, then I don't talk against it, of course, but at least first time at bat, I would get some experience going with somebody, have somebody in camp with you and stuff, and both of you learn together.
Really well and is really strong, but doesn't really care about hunting that much, but likes to camp. That's easy to take.
Yeah.
You're not going to compete with them for a moose. There might be supper when you get back to camp, and then they can help you pack it out.
And I realize it gets expensive to go, and I'm retired now, so the last year since retirement and things like that, I have the time and opportunity to go, and I hope everybody can get to that point. But there's a time when people ask, I love to hunt moose, but I don't see myself hunting moose forever because physically can't do it the way I want to do it. And if I can't do it the way I want to do it, then I won't I'll probably stop doing, I'll have to stop doing it because it's such a physical thing. But, you put a moose on the ground, you're responsible for getting all that meat out. It takes 9 or 10 trips. And some of the management units that I'm hunting in require you to take all the bone out. You got to take the animals out on the quarter. So you're talking some physical weight. And then it becomes up to you to be able to great calling or whatever to get the animal close enough and know that you can get it back to camp. So that's where I'm at now. I used to go way out and hunt, and wherever I saw a moose, I would try to kill it 3-4 miles from camp or whatever. And now I have to be smarter, and I have to let those go and try to call them back into camp. And different techniques I use, I call it the Pied Piper effect. I go out as far as I can early on in the hunt and start calling my way back to camp instead of staying at one spot and allowing the animal to come to me for hours, which it takes hours a lot of times from one calling location. I'm just getting my sound out there, getting the cow and heat out there, the sound, and then I work my way, move closer to camp every half hour. So I'm putting the cow and heat, the lonesome calls out there for whatever to be heard. And early on in the season, the moose aren't quite ready a lot of times to come in or get ready for the rut. And all of a sudden they think, yeah, it's time for me to start rutting more. Then they remember where they heard those last sounds and maybe get close enough. And then the next days or two, I don't have to go out as far. My voice covers that distance, hopefully capturing where I once was the day before or 2 days before. And then I'm bringing those animals back. And you're like, how do you know that? When I first go, I don't see any sign. I don't see hardly any tracks. I don't see any much. And I think this place really stinks. Like, I picked the wrong place. There's no moose here. But then after me being there on the ground and calling like this, all of a sudden I start seeing moose around camp closer, and I start seeing more and more bulls. And then it becomes being selective, trying to shoot the ones that are legal, and then going beyond that for me, try to take the one that's most mature type of thing, So I'm passing up legal bulls, and people think you're crazy, but like I said, I have other animals, and I just really love the challenge of taking the most mature animal in the area.
I love it. Do you have a, and it's probably a silly question, but do you have a favorite moose that you've taken that was either like special, super special for one reason that stood out, or it's bigger, had more, or it's harder?
Not really. I have one. Of course, everyone has the largest moose, the biggest moose that I have, and that came in most aggressive. But I like my first moose, which was the furthest from the original camp, over 10 miles of walking to get there to where this moose was. But then I was crazy, but not stupid. I saw another lake that I could, and on a map, a lake that, and I saw a plane take off from it. So I knew there was an avenue to pack it to a new lake. So I packed it 2 miles to this new lake. That's some of the things I looked at from then. People think there's moose everywhere, and you might think of that if you watch the films and stuff, but it's really not. It's really game void a lot of Alaska. So when I'm looking for a new spot, I want to try to find multiple landing spots. If I can land here on a gravel bar and over here on a mountain ridge, I can get between those two pickup locations. That expands my range, and I'll hunt, move my camp and so forth to a certain point of not seeing anything. And then you pass the point of no return, and then you're not going back to the original, and you're going towards the second pickup spot. Now, those are rare places, but they're out there. I've had some where I've dropped in on a super cub on floats on a pond, and then knowing that if I kill the moose downrange, down towards the gravel, I would have contact with the pilot. Okay, bring a different piece of equipment, super cub on tundra tires, to pick me up to get the moose out down here. And then these types of things you plan in advance, but it's not as good as a float trip as far. I haven't gone on one, but a float trip, it seems to me that you could cover a lot of range. But for my type of hunting, which is primarily calling, I want to stay at one spot long enough to give the moose a chance to come in. And long enough doesn't mean call for 2 hours or whatever, 3 hours or a half a day, but it means calling for multiple weeks. So you're patient enough, and you're catching them as they come through. Because in my mind, the moose, like whitetails, once the rut starts, they start to expand and move and look for their territory. And ungulates, like whitetails and bucks, the higher the deer density, the more deer there are, the smaller the home range of a buck. He doesn't need to travel as far to have a tight home range. So whitetail people, that's what they're doing. They're putting out food plots and so forth and making does congregate to their area. And thus the buck has a smaller home range, giving them opportunity to take them. So you try to expand that to a moose, which has very low animal density, very low moose density. So his home range might be 10 miles. And so when you're stuck as a dot on a map, sitting on a beaver pond, it's very hard for you to extrapolate the whitetail hunt to the moose hunt, but the animal needs to move through your theater, move through the mountainside. So it turns out to be pretty much constant or intermittent calling throughout the day, every day, noon and night, till you get it right, till you to your sound, your voice call, your cow and heat call reaches the right ears of the right animal that really wants to play the game with you. And then a lot of times you're calling him in and you see him, he looks like he's in the wide open, and there he is, 40 yards, he's in the wide open the way it looks, and then he's 30 yards, he's in the wide open, then it comes time to shoot, and you're like, oh man, I can't, he looks like he's in the wide open, but they're in this dwarf birch, this pucker brush we call it, and he's got branches covering his heart, covering the lower part of his chest. And so therefore you keep calling and keep trying techniques to get that animal to come from not the 40 and 30, which some people could make those shots, but down into the 20s, and you still don't have a shot. I have to call these animals in many times to 10 yards away. So
it would be so frustrating
that I talk about.
Yeah.
And all these things.
Like it's so big, but the vitals aren't there because of some tag holders or birch or he's in the 6 or something.
So for us as bow hunters or traditional bow hunters, ethically, we're trying to use all these other techniques of flashing and different calling techniques to get that animal to come close, which none of that is required when you're hunting with a rifle or some other equipment that you can shoot them when you first see them. They're missing that whole part of the hunt that we call it the execution of the hunt, all the way from 100 yards down to, in my case, is 10 or 15 yard shots at moose. And so they're leaving that in the field just by the nature of the equipment that they use. And for me, I don't want to leave any part of that hunt out there. I want the whole experience. And it gets pretty hairy. Animals that you're not taking are still huge. Some of them are past their prime. They've been through the rut before. They get ornery and then they like to charge and like to come after you. And Brian, I'm sure, has, and Monty has experience. Many others, friends that have hunted moose, have experiences that they mistake you for a challenging bull or a subordinate bull with a cow in heat, is what our scenarios that we like to depict out there. And once they see movement, they think that, okay, it's time to come on you. And if you read some of the chapters of my first book, I have friends that shot a moose, wounded it, and got gored by a wounded moose. And so things like that happen to you, and then they're in the back of your head, that getting past some of that fear. And after a while, it becomes second nature, like driving a car or in heavy traffic in a big city or something like that. I used to be really scared to drive through Chicago land or whatever on the tollways or whatever. And now I do it all the time to get to my hunting property. And you explain that to somebody compared that don't know about being around moose or bears. You have the encounters. Grizzly bears like to stalk me from the calling of the moose. If you're in an area, some areas don't have a lot of bears. Most of the time I don't, but areas that have a river going through them, they have fish in the rivers, they had more concentration of bears. And then you have more opportunity to get youngers or immature bears, grizzlies that come in on you several times. They like once a heavy wind on the curvature of a hill, I hear movement and I turn and look and I see the butt of a grizzly bear running away at 25 yards. So he came in, saw me, and determined that I was a human. Then the God-given fear of man clicks into this bear and he turns and runs. But he's coming in because I'm calling like a lonesome cow moose or a bull grunting, and he's coming in looking, and these are moose engagements. Where's the calf? He's learned from experience or what have you. Or the high-pitched sound of a cow moose whining could sound like a predator call as far as a distress call for a rabbit, but whatever the case. And then other times I've gotten to see them come in, they're low hunch, coming in quiet and stand up 25 yards away, and you're standing in the same pucker brush that I described, and you're all in camo to be a tree or a bush or whatever, and then now you need to be human again, and you want that bear to see you as human, not as a calf moose or a caribou or something. But he only sees half your body, so he's standing up looking at you, and he only sees half your body, and you have a white whisker face or whatever. You look just like the face of the caribou that he killed a month ago. So you're like, boy, I hope it clicks in soon. And then this God-given fear of man that I describe it clicks in. Basically, human instinct, fear of man. He drops down and runs off. But you take a deep breath at that point, when that happens.
I bet. Brother, tell us about your most recent book, The Enchantment of Bowhunting, and because that's your latest written work, and
yeah,
I put a goal. I realized that, that exactly right, and I really like 2025. My family, we've always been voracious readers. My kids read all the time. My wife reads a lot. I do usually, and then I feel like it just got tapered off in 25. But I made a goal to read at least one hard copy book every month for 2026. Enchantment was the first book I picked up. And it was, even though I bought it all the way back in eTard, but I read it and finished it in January and loved the book. In fact, I was telling, we read books at night before bedtime and stuff. And a lot of times it's a kid book, but sometimes I would pick up one of the chapters and read this one of the hunting field notes that you had to my boys are 10 and 12. And as they like adventure in these things. But anyways, give us kind of a synopsis there and let people know about the book, but also what compelled you to write a second book and what inspired you to do it with this focus.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I have other folks that have written me the same, telling me that they read a chapter a night to their kids, and Pete Gagavazi out in the Montana area. And then South Cox, he would read a chapter of my book to his podcast listeners. I guess it gets him fill in the blanks, but he got a good response, and as well as I did from my original book was One with the Wilderness. That book characterizes what I've done in the early part of my hunting career, and a lot of them chapters were rewritten articles from published magazines that I submitted, but the journey towards self-reliance and so forth. And I would go on a tour with Gene and Barry, so to speak, with Primal Dreams. And I had my book at that time. And Gene Wenzel inspired me to write that, saying there's a lot of folks out there that do it yourself hunt and so forth, but there's not a lot that just strictly do a lot of solo. That was my inspiration. Never dreamed I would ever write a book. And I wrote one of the chapters or articles that I submitted was about Bart Schleier, a friend of ours that died, and I wrote about his life, and that was like 11,000 words. And I was like, if I can write 11,000 words on one subject, and it was published in Traditional Bowhunter magazine as 2 parts. And so that once I got to that, I compiled the chapters that I had and wrote 27 chapters for One with the Wilderness. So since then, I'm trying to promote that, and then Chasing Solitude video. And I go to these shows, and I would get a lot of people that say, oh, I love your book. Where's the next one? So you get a priming the pump. You get people, where's the next one all the time? And this fast forward to being on the Compton's board, this young man would come up to the Compton Rendezvous and ask me, oh, I read your book last year, and when are you going to write another one? I go, I don't know if I have it in me. It's a lot of work and stuff. Then the next year he'd come back and ask, where's that book at? Did you write another book? No. So he hit me like 2 or 3 years in a row, and he's getting taller and taller. He's a young man. So this young kid has the passion, and he's telling me to get off my butt and get going. So that summer I had about 15 chapters written for the book and decided I better knock it out. So last year, or the previous year in 2024, I wrote the rest of the chapters. A lot of my writing happens when I'm in the lockdown mode in camp, like in Alaska. I'm writing about Africa and stuff like that, chapters. So the more one year I came out with three book chapters written, so that means I was socked in the camp a long time for bad weather, for rain or fog and so forth. And so that's where a lot of the emotion comes. And then my first book, my wife got sick with cancer, multiple myeloma. And so I'd take her and be with her through chemotherapy and surgery and all that in the hospital. And so instead of watching TV, I started writing. So the first book, more than half of it was written basically in downtown Chicago waiting on her healing. And so when that book came out, she passed away. And then that book came out right at the same time. And so I was really blessed in a way to have that, to fill in the void that's lost by doing something, talking and doing something. And I make a bows at that time. I talk about that, building a bow, something occupy your time. You guys are bowyers, so occupy the time after that loss. And so that came to that year, and I was socked in camp and came out with more chapters in 2024, and pretty close. So then I started writing. So from August till February of last year, I wrote the rest of the chapters. So there's 40 chapters, including poems and vignettes, small chapters, and so forth, and some mixed bag. And the premise of this one is finding the collateral benefits of being a bow hunter. Because my first book, my mother would pitch it to the church ladies, and they'd come up to me and say, I never ever dreamed about reading a book about bow hunting, and yet enjoying it so well. So that I knew that I could reach the non-hunters. Kept my same format in this one and just fill in the blanks of my experiences. Trouble with hunting turkeys. I didn't really know much about them, and expert turkey hunters would read those chapters and think, boy, this guy's really not very good at turkey hunting, and he should have did this and that. But that's the whole point of it.
I think one of those chapters is even called like the trouble with turkeys or something.
Yeah.
Along those lines.
So the point is, people that are in the same boat with me can relate to me regarding that. And
Look, man, I got several turkeys when I was a compound hunter, and I still haven't gotten one with my trad bow. And I tell you, I go about 3 days of turkey season with a trad bow, and then I just go grab my shotgun because they make my blood boil.
Yes. So then the poetry, like you said, the poetry, and so the chapters, I guess, have a poetic nature. And you're not the first one that said that regarding my writing. And other folks said that the passion is that you want to get to the point, but you want to take somebody along the trip with you on the emotional side. So there's bear and elk and deer and moose, and some solo hunting, some group hunting with bears. And there's small techniques, little nuggets found in each chapter. It's up to you to find them, that little special treats in each chapter regarding aspects of life, aspects of technique, aspects of the hunt, how to do it. But it's definitely not a how-to book, or this is how you kill a moose book, or any of that type of stuff, or kill a white-tailed deer. But
there's certainly tactics in there, right? But I think you do such a great job also, Mike, of capturing feelings, not just feelings in the hunt, just like what brought you to that specific hunt and that encounter, or the friends and the engagements. And you obviously touch on the loss of your bride and that void that was left, and how you're still thriving and you're finding the things that give you passion and purpose and a calling and your faith. And again, yeah, there's hunting in every chapter, right? But it's not a hunting how-to or just a series of adventures. Those are included, but those are almost a peripheral. And again, I think it's a very beautiful book, and I really enjoyed reading it. And you're not going to see me grow any taller when I see you. It'll probably just be wider, but I'll be referencing like, hey, when's the next book coming out? You know?
Yeah, good. And then same with what you're saying, I would think that people would gravitate towards the grand adventure of a solo moose hunt, or going out west to Montana or Colorado, hiking into the wilderness 7 or 8 miles and packing out an elk and all that. But I find more and more people gravitate to the small things, like when I was a kid in Boy Scouts or being an Eagle Scout or coon hunting. People gravitate to my journey towards self-reliance. You're trying to rely on a compass. You learn how to use it during scouts, but you don't really know it till you're out in the woods chasing a coon hound and it's pitch black and you don't know where the heck you are. You have to rely on it. And so things like that, the woodsmanship that come. And so, like I said, I do the effort. And in the back of my mind, who am I writing for? I basically tell myself, without having much of an ego, you want to just reach one person, reach that one kid or that one fella that's hard on his luck after he lost his wife, or somebody that's having issues with some sort of addiction. And for us, the hunting can fill those voids in their lives. And it's not in your face in this book at all, but it's subtle. And if you look for it, you'll see it. If you look for it, you'll find it.
I think these are all really good points. I think whatever you're looking for as you're reading it, you're going to find it, right? If you're looking for this sense of adventure and the feeling and you hear your heartbeat in your ears when you're drawing back on a big buck or a bull, that's there, right? Some of the logistics and planning and some of those things are there. The tactics and techniques and procedures are there. And then there's the reverence and the feeling and all these things we've discussed, and the imagery of the place you're in is there. And then despite being widely a solo hunter, you've got fellowship with the hunting friends in camp and everything else and some of their stories. And that's all there too. And it's very present, which makes it just a beautiful piece of literature. So you've got the 2 books. Where can everybody find, we mentioned at the very beginning, but let's give it a repeat here. So where can everybody find your books, Mike? And you've got some DVDs on there too, but you've also got Finding Solitude on YouTube, I believe, right?
Yeah, Chasing Solitude is on YouTube and my Herd Bull Productions channel. Also, my website is Herd Bull Productions, and I have my books and some poetry and some free reading there. Some journal section. You can see some of the free reading I give you there on my website. It's not that dynamic. I only have a few items. And then the new book called The Enchantment of Bowhunting is out now. And I have dealers, and you can get it at my site, Herd Bull Productions. I generally autograph the books that go out through me, but you can also get them at Three Rivers Archery. When you're ordering your arrows or new bow or whatever, you want to have a little more passion, or you want to learn a little bit of something, throw that book into your basket and check it out.
Great. So, all right, buddy, before we taper off here, you're a man of adventure and deep thought. If somebody's thinking about taking that journey, they're used to sitting in tree stands or chasing ducks on the river in the cold or turkeys at the local farm, but they haven't done that backcountry thing, or particularly a solo type of adventure, what type of advice would you give them?
Number one, don't put it off. If you still feel that there's a little ember inside you, you need to feed it. You need to fan that flame, throw some tinder on there and get it to grow. How you do that? But reading the books or joining some of these organizations that Matt just talked about. Compton's Traditional Bowhunters is a sort of a family-oriented traditional outfit. You can gravitate towards that. Or Professional Bowhunter Society, more serious type of bowhunters. That group, they have youth program as well, starting out, but get with somebody and talk it up with them, your friends, and then try to find the logistics of going and find the time and just force yourself in some regard. And for me, the anticipation, the planning is a lot of times much more fun than some of the hunts I've gone on when you're stuck in a camp or whatever. But basically build enough self-reliance. You can't get it only through the reading. You need to experience it. So you have to get out little steps at a time. If you're a hog hunter down in Florida or somewhere, or Texas, you're halfway there, because those things are pretty tough, and you're into brush country that everything looks the same. And like I talk about going off into the wilderness, but a lot of times I'm high elevated. I can see, you have a good idea where you're at, but you drop off into one of these swamps. You better be able to read a compass and be able to take care of yourself in some of those situations as well. You're halfway there. So it just needs a little prodding. And I know some of the hunts can be expensive if we're talking about Alaska or Canada, you'd have to have a guide or something in Canada. But out west, it's all wide open. I go to the trailhead and I talk about that trailhead is a portal to the wilderness. You can walk in and go as long as you want, or stay as long as you want. Short trips until you get your confidence, and then basically go for it.